all those who are watching us. And hope that they will tune in next week and become a regular supporting of the program, Transforming Lives. It is a beautiful Sunday at 4 p.m. And you know what happens at 4 p.m. At every 4 p.m. on a Sunday, we invite everyone, friends, families, and also, like we said, for you, if you have any enemies, invite them to come and listen to the program, Transforming Lives, because on this program, lives are positively changed under the power of God. And so today we have a bombshell program for you, a very interesting program for you. And we have two capable young men in the house who is going to guide us through this conversation. We're calling it a conversation because it's much to be discussed, it's much to learn. And at the end of this program, like we said, we are expecting that lives will be positively changed. Our guest, let's start with our very first guest. You heard about our topic. It's fatherless and the road to reconciliation. So we're talking about being fatherless and reconciling from a place of being fatherless. And we will get into that shortly. But before we do that, let's meet the two young men who's going to assist us in navigating this conversation. Let's do that very quickly. So the first guest is Mr. Elwood Times. Now, he is a father. Well, first, he's married, so he has a lovely wife. He is a father, so able to speak about this subject in many different ways. He works in the hospitality industry. He's been working in that line of work for over 30 years. So imagine that. He knows about service. He's an entrepreneur. I love his hobbies. He loves cycling, jogging, landscaping, reading. So he's very physical. Here is somebody interested in making sure not only his body is fit, but also his mind. So please welcome Mr. Times to the show, Transforming Lives. And I'll move very quickly on to our second guest. Thank you so much for coming. I see persons are coming in. Thank you so much for joining us. Our second guest is Mr. Kendall Lewis, and no exception, he is a father. He is married to the lovely Claudette McKinsey. So McKinsey was a former name because his name is Kendall Lewis. So she's now Claudette Lewis. They have 4 children. He is employed at the U.S. Embassy. He works with Dr. David Allen, as the dealing with family and dealing with at-risk youth. So that's his specialty. He also works with the Prison Fellowship, with group counseling, and he is a certified youth leader with the Ministry of Youth. So that's just basic summary background information on to our guests. We don't want to linger because they are both believers. So that, being believers that trump all the other things I've just said a few minutes ago. But we want to give them sufficient time to get dive deep into this subject, talking about fatherless and the road to reconciliation. So, gentlemen, welcome to the show, Transforming Lives.
Thank you so much, Jackie. Good afternoon, Jackie. Good afternoon, David. Good afternoon, all of the listeners. Good afternoon, farmers and the world. Nice to be here.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone.
Go right ahead.
It's indeed a privilege and a pleasure to be here. And I could say it is not how you start, but how you finish that makes this journey memorable.
Oh, well, thank you so very much. So we're going to be talking about starting and finishing. So just before, I just in preparation for this show, I looked at some information. As it is said, fatherless children have more difficulties with social adjustment and are more likely to report problems with friendships and manifest behavioral problems. They can become bullies. So listen to that. They can become bullies in an attempt to disguise insecurities. So, I mean, that's just giving you some background in terms of some of the things I'm sure you know much of some of the consequences of children being deemed fatherless. But let's start with a working definition. From where you sit, how would you describe a fatherless child? What is your working definition of a fatherless child?
If I may take a stab at it first, I would say, and I would speak from from my own experience, I would say a fatherless child is a child who grew up in a home where there was an absent father. At home sometimes you have a cousin who's a male. Sometimes that helps a bit, but I don't think that that there's any relationship really that could truly replace the place of a father. So I would say growing up in a home without a father and just a mother there as caretaker, acting as father as well as being, mother.
Thank you very much. Let's hear from our other guests. Do your definition, anything to add to that?
Yes, ma'am. I would take it
Okay.
from perspective, and it's even when the father is in the home, but not
Are you
performing
peeping my script? Go right
the
ahead, sir.
role, but not performing the role and the duties and the function that he should carry out in the or in the life of his kids.
Okay, that's much more expansive. So thank you, both definition, well received. So we now have a working definition. So let's talk about the Bahamas, dealing with the Bahamas. We have a person listening all around the world, but just talking a little bit about the Bahamas. Is there, from where you sit, a challenge with in our homes of absent or absentee father? Is this a prevalent challenge? Are we talking about a big rock problem, or are we talking about, a minimal problem in our society?
I would take a stand at this. First, we are talking about a big problem. And when
The internet is horrible.
big problem, I had few encounters, and even with myself, with fathers. Some of them, they would feel that even if they be the provider, just paying the bills, carrying out the duties and functions, that is what being a father entails. But then you get to realize that sometimes, and even with my work, the kids don't care too much, believe it or not, about the things. The kids want the individual. They want the individual attention. They want the individual approval. They want the individual guidance, the individual way of telling them, even if they may not want to know right or wrong, or they may feel resentment or hate it, believe it or not, that is what they truly want.
You definitely have children in your home. Absolutely, they want that guidance, and I think sometimes, and I'm going to let my guests talk a little bit more about that. I think sometimes we based a need based on a reaction, because they're reacting as if they don't need it. We assume it's something that they don't need. But I'll allow my guest to elaborate further on that in terms of children needing that guidance in the home from a father.
Yes, definitely. If I may, I believe fatherlessness in our country is at an all-time high. I think it's an epidemic proportion.
Wow.
And, pandemic in the country, and, we are taking measures, drastic measures to curtail and to really put this thing in and to control this and to, like the Prime Minister say, beat this back until it's totally, annihilated and alleviated. But
yes.
This fatherless epidemic, has been around even before I was born. I'm now 51 years old, and I met this going on. All right. There was a editorial in the Tribune from back in 2005, and the statistic shows that more than 65% of live birth at our healthcare centers are single parents, meaning unmarried females. But if that wasn't bad enough, 85% of our households here in New Providence and Grand Bahama are headed by single females.
Wow.
With multiple children. In most cases, not just a child, but multiple. And guess what? There is not a father in sight. He has been gone. And in some cases, he left even before the child was born, like the father left. If I may just go on further with some startling statistic, the Bahama Journal, again in 2005, and of course this was but 16 years ago. So, and we haven't done anything to arrest this vexing. I'm sure that it has gotten so much worse. More than half of the Bahamian children are born outside of marriage. Okay, I'll read it again. More than half of Bahamian children are born outside of marriage. And according to Social Services Minister Melanie Griffith, children, especially boys, need positive male influence in their lives. All right, and hence we see our boys in our society. And of course, our girls need help as well. But speaking as a young man, I could speak so much more stronger to the male hurt and emptiness that accompanies fatherlessness. So in our society, in our country, it is more than 2/3 of the homes are headed by unwed moms. Okay, more than 65%, like I said, of live births are by single mothers. Okay, so it is a serious vexing problem of epidemic proportion, in my opinion.
Well, that point is well taken. You can't argue with statistics. And so hence the numbers speak for themselves. The fact that it's been such a long-standing problem and it persists even today, what steps do you think we're not taking any steps, or we're not taking, and both of you can answer this, we're not taking sufficient steps to address this challenge?
I don't think we are taking sufficient steps. And I would speak from experience. I came up, like I said, with a single mother. Didn't know my father until later on in my life. And I pretty much repeated the same cycle, when I was a teenager, I had a couple of kids, outside of marriage, of course, and being immature, being not ready for that kind of responsibility, etc. I made no real tangible steps in the direction to be a better father, because at the time I really didn't know how to be a father. I didn't know what that was, because remember now, I didn't grow up with a father. I didn't have a father. So I didn't know the steps to take and the things to do. Okay. It wasn't until later in my life, a long time later, with a lot of trial and error, a lot of mistakes, a lot of regrets, that I started to learn, and I observed other fathers. Like I said in my bio, I like to read. So I've been doing reading on the topic. I've read one of Dr. Myers, late Dr. Myers Monroe book on principles, called Principles of Fatherhood. I recommend Single Father out there. It's a great book. And, so I learned over time. But no, it's not being dealt with or approached. And it's for like various reasons. And I could get into that at some point later during the show, but I would let the other guests maybe take a stop at it. But, I have some thoughts and reasons why I believe, men are not tackling this vexing problem like we should.
All right, our other guests, and then we'll quickly go on to those reasons because we need to know, to try to get to the root. If it's such a big challenge, then why are we not addressing it? But I'll let our other guest make his contribution.
Thank you very much. I agree with my brother Elsie. Matter of fact that we had similar back to the point where he did not know his dad. I grew up in the home with my dad, but he was not there like I made mention. My whole thing, for me, you look at failures, you look at immaturity, and you look at transitioning. And the word transitioning doesn't only just mean moving from one place to the other, but it means growth. So when you have to come to that place that you have to grow, you seek and you say, okay, I didn't know this about my dad. I didn't want it to be this. And I get to realize, just like my brother, what you resent is what you become. And I resented some things about my dad, not realizing that I became the very thing that I resented.
Wow.
And it's through the grace of God that made so much changes in my life that I get to work so much around young people and young men. And then working along with them, even when I'm a security officer in the school, I get to realize one common thread, that they all had absentee father. So I took the opportunity then given by me by God to just let them realize that if we focus more on the things that we have in common, we can curb some of these things. But it's the things that we have in common, that the things that we do not appear to have in common because we don't talk. And that's our problem, where we don't talk, where we don't communicate. It gave me an opportunity that I even wrote a program for social service called Fathers Make a Difference. Not realizing that it truly is until you get the old song, Father Abraham had many sons. Me would have 2 sons, 4 sons. Even the ones out there now, they appear to be more of a child even to the ones that I have now. So that taught me that I had to realize we as men have to position ourselves so our kids could be like us in a positive way, not to be like us in a negative way. So we have to get past our own immaturities in growing so that our children can grow the way we would want them to be.
Wow, you said a mouthful and you said some deep nuggets there. Because I think sometimes a man believe that if they're not in the home, if they're missing and absent, that nothing takes place. Like if the child doesn't have them, he or she is not, he's not present in the home, then his incorrect habits cannot rub off on that particular child, because basically he's not present. But what you're basically saying, whether present or not, you're teaching you're passing some message on to your child.
Yeah.
But yes, well received. And I hope that those in our audience listening, mothers, I see some mothers are getting some feedback from mothers in the house. So welcome, because we want you to also contribute to this discussion. You have these young men, and you would observe some of the challenges of having these young men in the home. So let's together, let's have this conversation going, and let's see if we can come up with some solutions to some of these challenges. So we were talking a little bit in terms of this problem persisting, and then we'll talk about some of the side effects and some of the early signs of that are displayed in the lives of children who might be deemed, in quote, fatherless. But let's talk a little bit about the parents, because we want to start at the adults at that particular level. Why do you think? It's 20. We've had this many years ago, and it's now 2021, and we're still dealing with the same challenges. Many children being born in homes without fathers. Why do you think? And as a matter of fact, instead of that statistics improving, In most cases, we can see from the numbers that the figures are increasing. What are your views, very quickly, what are your views on that? Why do you think those figures are going in that direction?
For me, I would say that it's going in that direction because even though we may seek to want to change it, we're not doing the things that is needed to change it. And
I think sorry, go ahead, brother.
Sorry, what is needed to change those things is what we're having right now. We cannot have a mature, direct conversation with our diverse. We care more about method, but not the result. If we can move from the method on how I became fatherless or what happened in my fatherless home, and just focus on the result, which is the primary goal, I think we would achieve more. Let's not worry about who's going to do it, if it's going to be black or white or Catholic or Anglican or PLP or FNM. It is all fathers. And if we all come together and just tell the naked truth of what happened, where we are, and how we get to where we are. Because we have to go back to the basics. I'm going to end with this. It does take a village to raise a child.
Thank you very much. I think there was, our guest wanted to add something onto that. Was that Mr. Tynes?
Yeah.
Or Mr. Lewis? Yes. Okay, go right ahead.
Yes, can you hear me? I think
yes, we can hear you. Yes, we can hear you clearly. Thank you.
You know, I believe the reason, we continue to repeat the same vicious cycle is because we're not doing several things as fathers. For example, as fathers who came from that background of fatherlessness. We have children and we are not dealing with it. We are skirting around it, we're dancing around it. We're not really being taught, or nobody teaching us how to deal with it, how to approach it. But here is a few solutions. I think the first thing we need to do as fathers, we need to own it. We need to own it. And we need to say, you know what? I have not ourselves in the mirror and face and say, you know what? I'm doing the same thing that knew how painful it was. And we have to own what we're not doing and how we're supposed to be. And I think that is hard for several reasons. I feel like, hey, that's a child, I'm the father, I have nothing to come to you and explain. If there's anything, you should come to me because I'm the adult here,
Yes.
So I think that is one of the approach that fathers don't humble themselves. Like, we're not humble enough to come to the level of our child, speak to them and say, you know what, I made some mistakes. I was not the best father that I should have been to you. So I think fathers need to own it. I think like another thing that needs to happen is fathers don't want to hear the naked, ready to hear the child say to them, Daddy, you weren't there, you were absent, okay, you were a bad father. Most fathers are not ready to look themselves squarely in the face, in the eye, and hear it from their child that they dropped the ball. Especially as men. Men do not want to be looked at as failures, as somebody who didn't live up to their responsibility. So what we do as men, we put our heads in the sand and we try to live our lives as if everything is hunky-dory, everything is fine. But when we lay down at night and we come to ourselves, our mind goes there and we think about it and it bothers us, but we're not ready to really deal with the ugly truth, okay? And in some cases, fathers must face ongoing rejection and even abuse if he tries to reach out. So sometimes your child will almost abuse you as a father because of the way they will speak to you, okay? And not willing to go through that. All right. Another point is we need to take responsibility as a father, honestly, and honestly acknowledging the ways that we contribute or continue to contribute to the deficiency in our child's life. You know, so I think as fathers, we have to be ready to own the problem. We have to take responsibilities for our actions, and then we need to be humble enough to hear our child say to us, "Dad, you wasn't this, you wasn't that, you was the best."
You said,
so forth and so on, and be humble enough to just listen and take notes wherever we need to be. Take notes, and then start to make small steps in the right direction to be a good father. And that's getting information. Because remember now, we too are single father or came from a single. So we need tools. We need to ourselves right tools, and then be ready to own it, start to make some things happen in our
you have given some excellent information. And before we go on to our other question, I want our audience to get ready. I want to welcome all of you listening via Facebook, those in the Zoom room. You know, there's a time we ask for questions because we believe in getting our audience involved. And I'm sure some of you have some questions as it relates to this topic. So I'm going to ask my next question, and then I'm going to give, in the interest of time, I'm going to give the audience, I'm coming to you, and I will give you an opportunity to ask your question before I continue. So get ready, raise your hands if you're ready. I'm going to ask Pastor Linda to get ready to recognize those persons who may have questions. But just before we go into our questions and answer period with respect to our audience, you said, like I said, you said a mouthful in terms of what needs to happen from the parent's perspective, the father perspective. What are some of the evidence, or what are some of the telltale signs that our children are having problems as a result of not having some of those early signs? Because sometimes we wait until they're an adult and we see them acting out as an adult and we're like, how did this happen? If we can start from infancy, we can more or less address it at that young start and at that young stage, and we can take corrective measures earlier and probably could be more effective as opposed to waiting until it's grown into, take it out of a small tree as opposed to a big tree. So taking it from that particular level. So let's talk about that infancy stage, that early stage. You've been, both of our guests, both of you said that you've experienced it. What are some of those telltale signs that a boy or a child might be suffering from not having a parent or not having a father in a home?
Well, I think you see it manifest itself very, very early in a child's life. And they start to act out in ways that in our society, we almost don't deem it as anything wrong. We feel like it's just a normal child. But you find that that the child lies. They're not truthful. They make up stories. They embellish. Stealing, bringing items home from school that is not theirs, and we feel like, some parents can overlook it and or don't even see it as a correlation, or don't even see it connecting. But the telltale signs manifest themselves in small ways when the child is a certain age. So at a very young age, those are some of the signs. As the child becomes a teenager, you will find that the young men, they start to smoke or turn on to drugs. They are running around with numerous relationships from one female like to the next. The female, like for example, like the girl, you would find like a female, she would be into boys. She would just go from boy to boy, and we in our society would say, boy, she bad, or she this, and we would slander her name and so on and so on. But again, those are just the telltale sign of a father or that structure, that nuclear family not being intact. Then again, the teenage pregnancy. And we see a lot of that, a lot of teenage pregnancy in our society. We see young ladies running away from home. Okay, that too, that we see every day. So the signs are all around us. We hear it, we watch the news, and we see it on television every night. And we just see it as the norm. We see it as something that just happened in our society, or we blame the mother, or we blame this one. But it's because the nuclear family or the structure is out of whack, and there's no father. Okay, there's no father in place, and Dr. Miles, I like to refer to him because he was one of my mentors. But Dr. Miles said that the function of fathers is, first of all, the father is the source. He's there to provide, so that child don't have to go steal or to be dishonest, like when he's to school or wherever. He is the sustainer and he is the nourisher. This is the father's role. He sustains the home. He nourishes the home. He's the protector. He is the teacher. He is the disciplinarian. Okay, he's the leader. He's the head. So when you look at the function of the family, he is really the foundation of a healthy and stable home. And when he is out of place, the home is out of whack. And mind you, I take nothing away from mothers. I thank God, and I say to my wife always, thank God for the mothers, because the mothers are left now having to carry such a burden, okay, such a load, not so much a burden because a mother does it, and I don't think she considers it, considers it a burden, but it's a heavy load, and she cannot be a father. She may try all she wants and all she can, but she's a mother, and she tried to wear that hat as best as she can. And I thank God for my mother, because she was there to pick up the slack, and she did all she could. But I had many nights where I almost cried myself to sleep. I had this void. I even lied, because I could remember, like in school, talking about our fathers, and I would lie and say, my father does this and my father is that. And mind you, I never knew my dad, but because I fit in, I had to try find something to talk about my dad. So I had to, what I'm saying? So
well, yeah, that's interesting, because right back to the lying, starting early with the lying. That's a good connection you're making there. You start very early, just trying to fit in, and that becomes a lifestyle sometimes.
Foundation of a healthy home, and when he's out, we have a foundation that is lasting. The Father God, and he was my father coming up. So I had a father. I always had a relationship with God, with Jesus Christ. So he filled that void and filled that gap for me. So I knew Jesus in my life, even though I wasn't a perfect young man coming up. I had that relationship with him coming up, and that kind of sustained me. And my story is one of the better ones when you look at the countless stories out there.
Thank you so much for that feedback. Just a comment from someone in the chat. They were saying one of the signs is constant bad behavior. So not just a one-time bad behavior, that becomes a lifestyle. That's indicative of the fact that something is going on in the home. I don't know if we have any other guests out there who want to actually come and ask their question, want to raise their hands and identify themselves. Any of our guests want to identify himself, sorry. If not, we are going to continue. Let's see if anyone, in terms of I'm looking to see if any hands raised. All right, so we're going to move on because we have lots of questions. So this whole issue of in our homes, am I missing a question? No. Okay, so we have this issue in our home sometimes of mothers believing that they can be both a mother and a father. All right, so
Jackie?
Yes?
Yeah, can I just ask the guest question or chime in on the conversation?
Sure. Absolutely. I'm looking. Absolutely. I didn't see your hand.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Denver Pratt. One of the things I wanted to say when we talking about fatherless, this is to the two panelists. Is there a difference between a dad or a father? And also too, when we're talking about fathers, Could it be one of the reason that we have fatherless, a lot of fatherless in our country is because I'm not knocking on the ladies, but they make bad decisions, some of them, that who is going to be the father of that child. So those are my two initial questions.
Wow, they're loaded. Okay, go right ahead. I'm gonna let my guests attack those questions, especially the latter one is a very loaded question. Okay, go right ahead, guest.
Well, the both of them are good. If you look at it from the perspective, the difference between a dad and a father, you would say most persons, what they would call today in the Bohemian vernacular, they'll say sperm donors, just to be truthful, and that's just how they have it. And so a father is one that nurtures, even though a mother nurtures. A father is one that guides. A father is one that directs. A father is one that comforts. A father is one that shelters. A father is one that helps you to know who you are, because he's confident and sure in who he's becoming himself. So it's a little terminology I would like to use, and it's while working, you're being worked on. So even as you are maturing, you're coming into that role yourself. You will never be 100% the father, but as you grow, your identity and who the person, your child, your son or your daughter will become basically from what you know. Some men, they fall short because, as my brother said earlier, he didn't know how to be a father. So what he only went on what he learned. So when he had a father figure around him, he took that from a mentor. So he learned from books, he learned from Dr. Miles Monroe. When it comes down to even the point with the mother or the woman choosing the wrong father, that in itself is a two-part blame, because it is the immaturity in the man who know that he's not ready, and then the woman who just sees a male for what the outward adoring may be, and then assumes that he would be a good father. It takes two persons to understand and to I would say the mature choice and the decisions to have a child or children and then bring them into the world, knowing that what they went. And I agree with my brother when he made the statement that yes, we have to be real enough to face the situation and the point on where we're at. My story to that is, and it goes beyond just natural, since we are all spiritual as well. Your natural life affects your spiritual life. When I didn't have a good relationship with my dad, even after I rededicated my life to the Lord, I did not want to say the Our Father prayer, because I had some issues with my dad, and I'm speaking about me. I had unresolved issues with my dad. So whenever I heard the Our Father prayer, I only thought of the word father. And a father is supposed to be someone that's supposed to nurture you, to guide you. And when I say in the Our Father prayer, I couldn't connect any of that with my natural father, with my earthly dad. And so it took me a while to even come around to even quoting Our Father prayer. I used to say the word and skip over the word father. I didn't see no male as a figure, because I thought my dad was supposed to be that figure to me. So most of our natural issues that we face stem straight on to our spiritual life. And that's where some of us even could not deal with some spiritual issues, because we're still dealing with some natural issues. So I wouldn't say, and I don't want to stray away from the question, the loaded one with the women. We all make some selfish choice and decisions. And as parents, we all have to come together to now correct the wrong that we made.
That's well said. Anyone else in our audience? I don't want to, that's a mouthful. Anyone else in our audience want to contribute to this conversation? Okay, so, we have a big issue in the Bahamas in terms of dealing with conflicts. And we blame, we have so many reasons why, it might be a problem. But from my personal perspective, and I want to hear my guest view on it, it is the father's role, based on my understanding and reading the Bible and just looking at homes and even in my own personal life. It's the father's role to teach his children how to relate to the world around what is a child or the child or around his children. It's the father's role to teach that relating. And when we learn how to properly relate, that will help us to be able to resolve conflict, because that's a big one on our jobs, in our churches, in our homes. We just do not know how, as a people, to resolve conflict. And like I said, I think lack of father in the home might be a big reason why. What do you think in terms of it is the father's role to teach a child how to relate to the entire world, relate to whether it's a wife you're getting, a daughter, how to relate to her husband, how to relate to authority. Some women have problems relating to authority because of the challenge with their father. Their father didn't teach them, or the father was absent, or they have challenges with their father. Talk a little bit about that relating and conflict.
Jackie. Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Great. Yeah, what we have this saying, this particular saying that we hearing, don't do what I do, do what I say, do.
Right.
Right. And we have
that's a prevalent saying in the Bahamas. That's a very prevalent saying, yes.
That's the attitude they have. They don't realize their responsibility as a father. Come home, the food has to be on the table. The wife or whoever has to have my meals, that I'm the head of the house, and so forth and so on. But with being the head of the home comes with responsibility and accountability. And a lot of fathers, they leave out that part. They don't quite understand that, yes, you may be the head of the house and God put you in charge, but you have to be the example. So the child or the young man or the young lady, she sees in her dad, whatever example he portrays, that's the example that son would act on, more likely. That's the example that the daughter example. If the father is abusive to her mother, don't know how to talk to her, don't treat her the way he should, as crazy as it is, right? That daughter will more than likely be attracted. That's the that is
twisted.
The
yes
influence.
That's how twisted it is. I agree with you. That's how twisted, spiritual and cultural. Okay.
Yes.
We have some read another feedback. Go right ahead.
Yes, can I finish?
Go right ahead. Complete your
thought. So that is just a glimpse of the influence that fathers have on their children. But if I may say this, I thought of this just before this question came about. I can remember growing up, and even though my father was not in the home, and I knew very little about him, my mother, and I want to say this to the mothers out there, to the females out there, please do not poison, and I call it poison.
Yes, I know where you're going with that. I totally agree. Proceed.
Do not poison your children because of the father not being there. And yes, he may have been no good. He may have left you holding the bag. He may have regretted. He may have hurt you. But do not transfer that hurt to your child or to your children, because what happens is at some point you move on with your life and you probably meet somebody else, you get married, and you kind of get over it. And now you left this baggage, this burden, this hate, this I'm like against their father. And that child may want to be free from that at some point, because no child want to be estranged forever from their dad, even if that child don't make any steps like towards like reconciliation. Reconciliation is first and foremost incumbent on the father. The father step first. But what some mothers do is, because of their dislike and their hate, whatever you want to call it, their negative feelings for the father, they put so much negativity in the child's head that when the father come now to try to reconcile or try to reconcile, he have to now go through so much anger, so much layers of pain and hurt and frustration and disappointment and all those things because of the mother. I will say this, I will end by saying this. My dad, because my mother was different, because she never had one ill thing or one negative thing like to say like about my dad, when my dad did finally come around, I embraced him with open arms and just wanted to have a relationship with him. I had no layers to peel back. I had no issues that I had to be working through. Yes, I felt pain growing up, but I had no added pain from a mother who put her burden on me as well. So when my dad finally showed up, I just wanted to be a good son, wanted to know him, and wanted to pick up right from that point right there. So I just want to say to the mothers, it is wrong, it is dangerous, and it's unfair for you to put the burden on the hate and this like on your child. You're doing your child a disservice by doing that.
Good and very important point. That's a very important point. Let me just read some feedback from another feedback from the chat. It says, the problem is spiritual and cultural. There is a lack of understanding of God's ideal for the family. Good point. When we put God first, we would have a basis for solving the problem. Putting God will give us a working basis for the problem. So we spoke about seeing some of the symptoms of that behavior in children, and we spoke about it as adults. And I think what happens often is, because of that feeling of isolation and the rejection and the hurt, possibly that same young man then reaches out wanting to feel love and protected and affirmation and all those good emotions, feel good emotions. He becomes involved in a relationship. And hence now, like we said, the pattern continues because he has no way, or he has to actually create sometimes a fantasy as to what it means to be a husband. And sometimes women miss men on this. They think that man, once you become a man and you get married, you should automatically know how to treat a woman, automatically know how to treat a woman, and automatically know how to treat your children, or automatically know how to treat your daughter. But like we said in this conversation, often, if you do not receive that within the home from which you came from, then there are other opportunities, and that's what I want to reach out now, where we bring in the house, we bring in the schools, we bring in the church, other arenas, mentors. There are other avenues for us to learn or to get some information, because knowledge is power. At least it will start us in the right direction. Talk about some of those places that our audience can go if they find either he or she is in this position or has family members in this position. Talk about some of those resources we can utilize to get more information to move in a positive direction.
If I may, I would take a brief moment. I'll start off with when you said with the women realizing they find a man, they feel that they should automatically, that the man should automatically know. That is true, but yet in some things you have to realize that if God calls the woman to nurture just as well as the father to nurture, the woman herself has to be able to realize that her job to, and when I'm talking about the woman, I'm talking about the woman as far as the wife. She has to realize that her job to nurture is not only to her children, but to her husband as well. Most persons would always like to use this line that that is someone else's child, that is not my child.
Yes, that's a common one.
Yeah, he needs to be nurtured from his mother. His mother should have taught him. And yet, I want to also agree with what my brother said, that we do have a tendency, even in our society, our culture, that we gear towards the women that are almost like our mother-like, not that we want a mother figure, but this mother-like, or a father figure, even if it be the females. And sometimes that goes with a negative and a positive connotation, because sometimes if the father is good and has good traits and how to take care of whom, or how to speak and how to treat the woman, or how to treat the man, how to treat the son, the daughters then will gravitate towards a man from that positive perspective, even from a negative one. And you have most men, or some young men, they gravitate towards the female that carries that positive side. And if they see a female that has a negative connotation from their mother, they have a sense of resentment. And so you always have to realize that when we decide that we're going to bring a child into the world, we have to realize the natural and spiritual weight that we're putting on these children. The Bible says, train up a child in the way he should go, that when he get old, he should not depart from it. We teach them some natural things, but we don't open up ourselves to have some spiritual conversations with them, to tell them that these are some of the things that we are battling with. Because some of us don't even open up ourselves to know that these are some spiritual things that we're battling with. We only know about them as natural, but we don't know them about generational curses. We don't want to take them down that line because it's going to open up a whole can of worms. But we have to be able to realize we have to build a safe place for whom to have a conversation, that when our children do want to converse, that they could feel safe, that they don't have to feel a pushback, that we don't want to talk about certain things, or we don't want to mention certain things. If we feel that we have a safe place for them to talk and for them to open up, they will.
So folks, I just want to open up to any of the other persons. I know we have a number of other persons to get a contribution. I know we have Dr. Macmillan, Dr. Carey, we have Reverend Sands from Prison Fellowship, we have Reverend Dexter Cartwright, and so we have a number of other persons who may, for whatever reason, in particular, since we focus on the men, I would like them to open up the mic and maybe make their contribution, share their experience. Dr. Carey, Dr. Macmillan, Reverend Sands, Reverend Dexter Cartwright, share your contribution.
Amen. Elder Dave, thank you for the opportunity and a wonderful session. Good afternoon to everyone. I have a question though, and I hope that our guests can help us with this. How do we address the recurring victim syndrome, where you have an individual who has been a victim of fatherlessness is now in the position where he is now having children? How does he cope with something like that? I hope the question is clear. If not, I can repeat it.
Well, I think if I make that question, because my life example of that, and I think father approached his family after coming from a background of fatherlessness. I think the biggest criteria or characteristic has to be humility. All right. And as fathers, we need to humble ourselves and admit to ourselves that we weren't what we ought to have been. All right, the Bible says that a humble child tastes God's grace, tastes the grace of God. I have learned in my life, okay? I have four children. I have two before my marriage, and I have two other with the two in the home. I would be lying. I had two like when I was in my teenage years, and I thought I was a bit more mature when I got married, and I had another two. And I struggled even in my marriage with my children. And it was because I took the stand that, hey, I'm the dad here, okay? I'm the husband here. I pay the bills in the house. I'm feeding you guys. I'm clothing you. So I'm not gonna humble myself to be this person that you probably feel I should be, or society feel I should be. But I believe, or in fact, I wouldn't say I believe, I can't phrase that. I should say, it wasn't until I humbled myself and admit to myself and realized that I was below the mark, and I started to get the tools and I saw the examples, that I started to make small steps. But let me conclude by saying this. I did one of the hardest things that I ever had to do in my life as a father. One of my daughters, I have two boys and two girls. One of my daughters, right, I pretty much I sat down with her and we went back in time, even before she came along, even before her conception. And I told her what my life was like, how I was just immature and running around and from woman to woman. And so I took full responsibility for who I was back then, okay? I own up to me not being a good father, and I promised that I would now be a better father, and I started to make steps in that direction. But also what I did was I apologized. I said to her, I'm sorry that I wasn't the father that I should have been, made amends. So the bottom line is, as fathers, we need to humble ourselves before our children, before God first of all, but before our children, and say, hey, I'm sorry, I was wrong, hear them out, and then start to make steps in the right direction to be a better father and live up to the promises moving forward.
Okay, so folks, what I want to do is just ask you to pause for a minute because it's 5 o'clock. I want to officially sign off from the radio, and then we can continue the conversation for another 10, 15 minutes if there's any one of my other guests or anybody else want to make a contribution. Folks, this program today is brought to you, as usual, Transforming Lives on Global 99.5, also on cable TV 974. I am joining and sharing with you in the beautiful Turks and Caicos Islands. And so I'm having it's a well-rested time. We're here every Sunday, 4 to 5, Facebook, YouTube, on Zoom. And so, folks, I just want to encourage you as we sign off on Transforming Lives next week. We have another powerful show, Women in Leadership. Should women serve in leadership in the church, or should they only remain in the home? Okay, and so we're inviting you to invite your friends. We have a number of guests who will be talking about women in politics, women in the church, and a number of different areas, women in leadership. Elwood, I just want to say, I see why you're so passionate about men, because when I hear your testimony and listen to your story, now it helps me to understand why you're passionate. But folks, you've been listening to the program Transforming Lives on Global 99.5. I'm your host, Dave Williams, with my co-host, Jackie Gardner. I don't know, I think she might have got knocked off by the internet. And we're here every Sunday. Jackie, are you still there? I'll pause for a minute. Jackie, are you on? Okay, no, she's not on. And so we end this program the way we always end, on Cable TV 974 and Global 99.5, reminding you that there's nothing absolutely more important than having a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. Not talking about your church, nor your denomination, nor my church. I'm not talking about whether you worship on Saturday or Sunday or Friday. I am talking about your personal relationship with Jesus Christ and being able to have what we call salvation now. Not in the future, not yesterday, not tomorrow, but now. We want to offer our condolences to those who are in mourning as a result of a loved one. But folks, I just want to thank you for tuning in on the radio on Cable TV 974. Dave Williams, host of the program Transforming Lives, along with my co-host Jackie Gardner, encouraging you to have a wonderful afternoon. Folks, you can continue. We should be live off of the radio now. We just continue on Zoom and Facebook and YouTube. Anybody else wish to give the comments? Share Pastor Cartwright, I know you on. Dr. Macmillan, since we specifically, Dr. Carey, man conversation, man talk. Any of you wish to unmute your mic and share?
Yes, Dr. Carey here.
Let's go ahead, sir.
Before I step out, because I have another program coming up, I'd just like to say, as I indicated in the chat, the problem is spiritual and cultural. We need to get back to basics and get back to what God planned for the family. Once we do that, I think we can relate to the problem realistically. Culturally, in our culture, there's been a pattern of allowing men to do as they please. I'm man, so whatever I do is well done. Nobody has anything to say to me. That attitude has been perpetuated over the years. How many children do you have? Well, I have 3 inside and 2 outside. That was an accepted pattern over the years. We have to break that. We have to change that. And to show God's plan for the family is that the family should be together in a marriage situation. There ought not to be children outside of marriage. The brother quoted statistics, 65% of children are born into homes where there is no father. So the responsibility is two-way, both man and woman. Woman is just as much responsible as the man. You can't have a child by himself. And I tell you, if these young ladies would put their feet down, a lot can happen for the better. But you know, selfishness. They want to show that they're better than the other lady. The man want to show that he's better than the other fella. Selfishness, we want to gratify his own selfish desire. We need to get back to God's ideal for the family. Once we do that, I think we'll be on the way to solving the problem.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Carey, for your contribution. Anybody else want to unmute their mic and share their contribution, especially whether you're, even though we say men, but you know, ladies, you allow also to share. Is there anybody else want to make a contribution?
Yeah, good afternoon, Elder Dave. Thank you for the opportunity. Thanks, guy right there. The problem, as I see it from my standpoint, is that this problem of being a father is so dynamic. And the fact that as time goes on, the family structure, what we know as the traditional family, has gone.
Okay.
It's gone. We have 2 women running a household, and they say they are both wives, and one taking a man role, and then you have 2 men trying to do the same thing, and it's all mixed up. And as you see the train of thought there, if Christ is out of the vessel, you have problems. That's why our country and the world have more problems. If you look back in the book of, I think it's Isaiah, the first 3 chapters, I think, the women were so plentiful. They say, I only want your name. Come live with me so we can have children. They wasn't concerned. They had money. They had all kind of jewelry, everything. That's back then. So we know this problem is, it ain't just spring up because it's a Bahamian problem. This problem is the enemy is fighting us. And the situation we have to deal with is we have to arrest the situation with our men. Respect is on each level, because if I'm a delinquent father, I need to have respect as being a male and a man. Now, my fatherhood I might have been in jeopardy at that point, but the child I also have to be respected because they were neglected at one point. But respect had to be on all levels, and we had to bring it closer to home. And I don't think it was a textbook situation here, But we all got to be, all of us who say we saved full of the Holy Ghost and serving the Lord, we got to tackle this male problem, and we got to have interaction with our children. There are some men out there who don't take care of their own children, but they take care of other people's children.
Okay.
They take care of their stepchildren good, but they don't take care of their natural children good. And that's another dynamic in itself.
Okay.
But we have to stay on this, Dave. You guys have it right on the head. We got to deal with this issue head on, and we got to do some table topics, and we got to interact more daily and put this in action. Start addressing these brothers, calling them out.
Yes. Okay, so I want to thank you, Pastor Dexter Cartwright. And as a matter of fact, folks, the next show I do on men, we will talk about blended families. I've had numerous persons who talked about that, blended families. And I know El will touch a little on that, but we're going to dedicate a whole show to dealing with blended families. But I just want to open up. Are there anybody else want to unmute their mic and make their contribution?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, I wanted to say, I think one thing that would help us as men, whether fathers or not, is having a society where we could, places where we could go for counseling or have, I say, confidential people we could trust, men, where we could open up. Because as society, a lot of men, because of how society is and being afraid to express themselves and feeling, a lot of guys have stuff bottled up. That's why the situation with the prison population, because a lot of guys with unresolved issues and stuff. So right. I think with mental health and the talk of always that, and everywhere you see around, you see women have support groups and building up each other financially in all aspects, spiritually and emotionally. And there's not enough avenues for that, I think, as far as for men. That is what needed, counseling, places to go and confide and share.
Okay, so I heard you, Roger. So all you're saying we need, and I agree with you, you're saying we need more places where men can go.
Very much so.
Okay, I want to thank you for your contribution. We got another 4 minutes left. Is there anybody else want to unmute their mic and make a contribution?
Dave.
Yes.
Yeah, one other thing. The Bible tells us about iron sharpen iron. I think I heard it earlier that mentorship is very important. I believe for those of us who have it probably halfway down packed, we have to start now reaching out to those men who are going to become men or who are fathers and probably doing it the wrong way. I think sometimes we become selfish and only look at our family and don't look at the neighborhood or the other man down the road. So we need to have some sort of mentoring program so we can teach our young men how to become fathers.
Yeah.
You know this clearly. We go into prisons a lot, and we ask the men how many of those who live in who grow up in the home without fathers, and 80% of them raise their hand. So I heard someone said earlier they have this anger in them. So we need some sort of mentoring so we can now how we can unrelink that anger and teach them and show them how they can become fathers. One thing I noticed that is in our country is sometimes our men decide to have kids and they abandon the kids, and when someone else step in or another man step in and take care of the kids, now they get mad. You see what I'm saying? And that child grow up recognizing the one who was there and who take care of him. A good example of Shaq. Shaq is a basketball player. He said his dad born him, but his stepfather was there to take care of him, and he recognized his stepfather as the father, not his biological father. Now, you know that can make you feel bad, but Shaq had to keep it real. He says, my stepfather was there.
Excellent point. So, Denver, okay. So if Denver's finished, what I want to do, somebody says a man scared to mentor, what makes someone ready to mentor? So because we got another minute or two, we need to wrap up the program. I'm going to ask my two guests if they have, within the next 30, 40 seconds, any final words they want to leave. Then I'm going to ask Jackie if there's any final thing she wants to say. Go ahead, Kendall or Elwood. What final words you want to leave with us today?
My final word I want to leave is that we are all in this together. We cannot allow our nation to go any further than it is now. We have to take up the motto. I think it's now time that we start to live by it: forward, upward, onward, together. So we have to come together to make and to change this paradigm shift that we wish to see. It can only be done once we put Christ first and allow him to lead us into this new Joshua land that we need to do, which is to bring forth a new generation of fatherhood that will fear, love, and revere not only God, but will love their wives and their household, their kids, as Christ loved the church.
Okay, thank you. Elwood, any final remarks you want to say? If he's still, okay, maybe he's knocked out with the internet. Jackie, what final remarks you want to leave with us? We can't hear you. Your mic is mute, Jackie. Unmute the mic.
Yes, the internet is giving somewhat of a challenge. Final word is, it's a big problem, but we serve a big God, and that big God, if we pray and ask for wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, he can lead and guide us. Thank you so much all for joining us.
Okay, so folks, I just want to thank you for taking out the time during your Sunday afternoon just to tune in and listen to us. Next week, women in leadership. Should women be in leadership in the church? Should women be in leadership in politics, in the government, in the schools, you name it? That'll be our topic. We have a panel of guests, well-known persons across this country. They'll be our guests. Women in leadership. Dave Williams, on behalf of Jackie Gardner, Transforming Lives, encouraging you to have a wonderful afternoon.